So we've got our work cut out for us. My grandfather, in the darkest hours, would always say, don't worry about it, kiddo. We got them right where we want them. I think that's what I would say today, that we've got our work cut out for us, but there's lots that we can do. And the light that we have been given has to be shared, no doubt about it, especially in a world that is groping in darkness. We have the answer given to us. So anyway, good place to start a new class series. Today we're going to do something that's part of our Pursuit of God theme, and that is to begin to explore who God really is by how he's revealed in the parables. You know, that seems like an odd approach. Did you get a lesson? And today we're going to talk about something that may not make sense to you at first, from the standpoint of, well, why would you start with the parable of the mustard seed? What in the world does that have to do with the pursuit of God and how we interact with it? I hope to be able to show you. So, all around us, and we have no better example than the last 2 or 3 weeks about what's been happening around the world, but certainly in our country as far as Christians being taken out, even children praying. So, okay, we're in many ways culturally hanging by a thread. Uh, Many of the people around us are literally ready to give up. And sometimes even we as Christians are tempted to give up. Usually we give up on people, and that would be relationships, but we give up on projects, we give up on hopes and dreams, even as ourselves, much less those around us. So this parable has a lot of importance to that, because there are several things that can be teased out of the parable. One of those is don't give up. Do not give up. Just don't. So we can start first with the example, and if someone would basically read that, Matthew 13:31 and following, I would greatly appreciate that.
How far do you want to go? Just 31 and 32? Or?
Well, we could do 31 and 32 or finish it out.
He presented another parable to them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, which a person took and sowed in his field. And this is smaller than all the other seeds. But when it is fully grown, it is larger than the garden plants and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the sky can come and nest in its branches. And then it goes on into the 11.
All right, that's fine. That's very good right there. So the first part of this, there's some key concepts we can draw from this parable. First of all, even the smallest seed can be powerful. Even the smallest people around us can become powerful. In the background, the mustard seed the Jews planted in their gardens during this time of Jesus could hardly be seen by the naked eye. You weren't even sure you were throwing seed. You couldn't be because they're so small. I'm sure at the end of the day, you dusted your hands and you probably dumped 1,000 of them on the ground. So that is how small the example given. And yet it grew into a tree enough that birds could nest in it. Truly amazing from that small beginning. Uh, in this parable, a certain man is God, the sower of the tiny seed that will grow to a gigantic size. The seed is his gift of faith in us. And when our faith in him grows in us, we can be planted in the world as examples of the power of God. Uh, when our faith continues to grow, uh, there are examples of the power God can do to heal that discouragement. Isn't that amazing? I don't think I have ever looked at this parable quite like I have in this lesson. So it's an interesting amount of things to pull from this. Uh, the man telling the story is the personification of this parable. God planted a seed in Bethlehem that grew in wisdom and stature, proclaimed the kingdom, died on the cross, and was resurrected. Then came the Pentecost and the birth of the church, which still stands today. We are part of that church. A small beginning that has a triumph conclusion yet to come. So, isn't it interesting, uh, this parable? It truly focuses actually on the next topic. The next key takeaway lesson here is that the immensity of God's power, not the size of our faith, it's that makes the difference. So, anything you want to see or talk about, and the minuscule can be the powerful. Have you seen that yourselves? Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. That's something that we often discount things. We don't understand just from the physical presence the power that is in that physical presence. We underestimate it. We tend to judge a book by its cover, don't we? It is human nature to draw some conclusions. In the first 2 or 3 minutes, you meet someone and you've got a pigeonholed, and it's sort of like, I have to tell you that I have stopped doing that. I have been proven so often wrong by that first 2 to 3 minute judgment or assessment that I don't do that anymore. I just kind of wait. I had a good friend, it's funny, this is a little bit negative, but I had a good friend that was an FBI interrogator, elder in the church. So he's very interesting. He was sent over to Iraq, sent over to Iran, and plied his trade craft there repeatedly. And one of the things he told me, he says, Brad, if you want to know what a person knows, just be quiet. Just be quiet. They'll tell you. And it's very powerful. So I have stopped the book cover and tried to listen carefully and let that person tell me who they are. I think it's a very useful thing, not from a negative standpoint, but a powerfully positive one. So, Jesus is trying to get us to take our eyes off our own insufficient faith and to concentrate on the immensity of God's resources for our growth and our change. Our job is to plant the seed in ourselves and others and leave the results to God. Any comments on that? How many times have we been discouraged in our own halting evangelistic efforts when we have worked hard and it just doesn't seem to grow? That's that hard, rocky soil that so many of us have encountered in that. Any comments on that? Does it make you want to give up?
Oh, it makes you fearful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I worry that what happens if I'm the seed that fell in the rocks? It's not going to grow.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's very.
yeah, absolutely. Well, again, focus on God's power, not our own. That is very, very comforting, I think, that God keeps trying to reassure us and to keep us in our lane. Have you ever heard that expression, stay in your lane? Well, God is teaching us this is your lane. Plant the seed, do your best to water it. But the outcome is me, the immensity of my power, God. And it's sort of like, that is very, very powerful. So, as we look at this, prayer becomes very, very important. It's the time that we do mustard seed planting. Uh, God is waiting for us to turn over all our troubles and our problems and admit they are too big for us and recognize that He knows what is best. How hard is that? Yeah. How many times do we become amateur engineers in our prayers? God, I know exactly what needs to be happening. I've got the plan. I even have blueprints. I'll share them. It's our life. Yeah.
That's when the human element kicks in.
Yes, exactly.
We have become so ego driven that this is my problem. I know how to fix it. I know how to fix it. I know how to fix it until you get so far out there, and then all of a sudden the realization kicks in. I don't know how to fix this.
Right, exactly.
And then once again, the ego doesn't want you to ask for help. It doesn't want you to admit that you have no clue what's going on, even though I have no trouble admitting 99.9% of the time that I have no clue what's going on. But we are so conditioned to not admitting fault, not admitting failure, that we don't know how to give it up and say, I need help.
Well, and you've heard the saying that perhaps it's best not to put people in charge of solving a problem that caused it. That's some real common sense there. It may take a different perspective, a completely different perspective than a problem we may have caused, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's sort of like, okay, we've got to turn these things over to God and even better to the Holy Spirit that dwells within us to guide us, to light the path, to understand exactly where I need to go next. And sometimes that requires patience. Not always will things be revealed to us in as timely a manner as we would so choose. And sometimes we rush to solve an issue and it doesn't turn out well. I had the privilege of at one point qualifying as a rescue diver, and the instructor, I've told you guys this before, the instructor stressed to us that no matter how bad the situation is, no matter if you're 120 feet down, which is the hard limit for amateur divers, 120 feet down without oxygen, stop. Carefully consider your next step because there's no situation you can't make worse. And man, that is so powerful. How many times? How many times have you just simple problem solving, not even church problem solving, but just simple problem solving? You said, "I think I got that," and you jump in with both feet, and it's sort of like, "I don't got that. I don't got that." You suddenly find yourself overwhelmed and probably having done more damage than you were already there. I'll give you an example. When I was on the faculty there at Cornell, we had a lab technician that was a vet student. Now, this guy was funny. He was very Jewish, very interesting, but he was hyper. And so he would come in, and part of his job was to very specifically wash glassware in a huge protocol because it was going to be used for cell culture and everything. Well, one day I saw this guy in there, and he bobbles a little Erlenmeyer flask. And he's like this. He knocks over the whole glassware shelf for that little Erlenmeyer glass. And it was not only that, but that was all the glassware that was going to be used that day. And it was just sort of like, his name was Howard Gittleman. And it's sort of like, Howie. Yeah, you should have just let that little Erlenmeyer hit the ground. And we can be that way. We can jump into a situation where initially it's just a small thing, but for some reason we feel compelled to jump in with both feet. And suddenly, ooh, we've done, the glassware that he destroyed was worth several $1,000s. So, you can make a 30-cent Erlenmeyer become a major disaster. We are guilty of that. Sometimes we're guilty because we feel guilty that we might have caused the problem, so we feel like we have to jump in now and solve it. Well, I'm all for accountability, but the bottom line is be sure that you really thought through and have prayerfully considered what the answer might be. And I think God's guidance in that, again, relying on the Holy Spirit to sort of, hey, that type of thing. So, any comments on this? Have you been guilty of that yourselves? I know I have. Ooh. Have you ever tried to blame others for it? I sometimes I line up all my tools that are not being collaborative, and then I destroy one of them. It's sort of like everybody paying attention. It's sort of like tools don't cause the problem. So yeah. So that's a good take home. The immensity of God's power, not the power, the size of our faith, makes the difference. So the third take home lesson is this. When God grows a mustard tree from our tiny seed of faith, the worried birds of our life will flock to see what we have become. Isn't that amazing? The mustard seed is so small that even birds sometimes will not eat it. And yet the birds come back and, yeah, they see what that is. That's amazing. So that's a really neat take-home lesson. So when we pray the prayer that we discussed up above, as far as looking to God's immensity and looking to our own insufficient faith, not as a negative, but a goal to grow further, God starts to recreate us. That's a concept that I don't think we pay enough attention to ourselves. He created us. He created us in His own image. But through the power of Christ's sacrifice and through the indwelling Holy Spirit, we begin to be recreated. We begin to be regenerated. We begin to do what the authors, especially Paul, talks about transforming where we were to where God needs us to be to serve in His kingdom. So do you see that? Do you see that in your own lives? Do you see that through faith, your own faith, that you're not where you were? I shudder to think about if I had stayed where I was when I was 23. It was sort of like I was old enough to be a danger to myself and every single person around me. I'm just so glad that I lived through, and most of the people that I dealt with lived through, uh, the immature person and spiritually immature person that I was at 23. It is just stunning when I look back. Now, most of us can't go back and fix stuff. You know, it's just a moment in time. What we can do is begin to work on ourselves, realizing that our mistakes may have long-term consequences, not only for us, but for others. Maybe we should really work on not being that person, not being where we were, but where we're going. The key is to understand, it's like a rifle shot. The key is understanding what the target is. What should we be striving for? Where should we be targeting our growth, and where would we take that guidance? Well, it's covered. It's covered throughout the New Testament. It's covered in the fruit of the Spirit, a checklist, if you will. A lot of my prior work was responding in the middle of really, really scary scenarios. And in those scary scenarios, you have to be calm, just like that stop, and because the next move you make may make it worse. We relied in many cases on checklists. It's sort of like, so be calm, start checking off the checklist now, and it's going to guide you where your emotions may blind you. It's really, really important. Well, it turns out that both the Old Testament and the New Testament provide a wealth of checklists. You know, when you start looking at many of the passages of the Bible, not just the fruit of the Spirit, which lends themselves to be a checklist, but many of the things that we're told about, including parables, have checklists. And so, like me, we really should pay attention to those. How many of you rely on checklists? Have you ever? Yeah. Yeah. Pretty easy to get really frustrated without them, no doubt about it. And it keeps you sane when everyone else, you know, is literally going crazy around you. Very helpful.
But it also defeats the purpose of making a checklist if you don't remember to bring the checklist with you when the time comes.
Yeah, we just talked about a new wetback that we had. And Manuel said, well, maybe we need to put some kind of a checklist wired to it. So, you know, for example, take the dust filter out before you do water, things like that. And it's so true. It's so true. No doubt about it. Any other comments? All right. So we're in the process of being grown into a mustard tree. We can become witnesses and hope to people around us who are ready to give up. God does not expect us to be perfect. He expects us to be contagious. Have you ever thought that you should be contagious? Have you ever considered that? Well, I must say I have not, although some would say in a negative way that I am. I get that. But contagious examples of real living and hope. What we have seen in the past weeks are people out of anger and dismay giving up all hope of change, and so they destroy what's there. That's a really sad way to approach change. Uh, we need to see that for what it is and try to offer real, living hope. I think that is largely what is missing in much of the discourse that we see today. So, as we begin to look at that, faith, hope, and love, greatest being love, but hope is there. Faith, hope, and love. Our faith, our hope, our love, helping others to find faith, hope, and love. That's what God intends for us. Now, is that easy? No. When someone is shouting and shrieking in your face, is your first thought, how am I going to give this person hope? How am I going to make sure that they understand the love of God and that? No, you're likely wanting to give them a throat punch.
You're pushing my button.
Yeah, exactly. Likely to give them a throat punch. That's what's in your mind. I wonder how they would hit the ground. No, that is human. That's human nature that we must put
That's
aside.
turning the other cheek.
Yeah, or just walk away. I think so much trouble is encountered when you start butting heads and clashing in an uncontrolled environment. Uh, Sometimes you just walk away. It's sort of like it's going to be better for you. You won't have to spend the night in jail that night. It's going to be better for them. They won't have to spend the night in jail. Sometimes just removing yourself in a kind and gracious way is all it takes to stop the escalation. Uh, it's a sad state of affairs that we see ourselves in today, but of all people, we really are the solution. And sometimes we don't want to be the solution, we want to be Jonah. I don't want to go to Nineveh. What if they repent? I hate those guys. And so many times we're guilty of being a Jonah. It's sort of like, I don't want to show them the truth. They might accept it. That's so wrong. And yet here we are as humans, and that's our first thought. So, any comments on that?
Well, with my job situation, you said one day, and it was similar to don't be a Jonah. And that's the way I wanted. I wanted just to quit and walk away.
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah.
My people need.
That's right. That's
They
right.
need to hear hope.
Absolutely. Hope is so
Even
important.
if I'm just there listening, it's more than they get.
Right. And our society, you hear hope and change and other things, hope, this, hope that. But we don't offer it. We don't offer it. We talk about it. We try to define it by actions, but hope, like just at the beginning of this class, people are hanging by a thread. They desperately need hope. And really, the pool of hope available to us is immense. We have it in our laps.
Really guilty one day because they're like, I'm coming to talk to Missy because I know she'll give me hope. And I wasn't hopeful that day. And they're like, if Missy isn't hopeful, then we need to just walk away, And I was like, I can't be that way, I've got to be able to be hopeful. God can move mountains.
Right. Well, and does every day.
And He's gonna move mountains.
And He does it on His own time.
On His
That's
own
exactly
time.
right.
He's got a
Exactly.
plan, and I'm just gotta hang on.
I am heartened by the examples that we have in both the Old and New Testaments about people that God chose to execute His will. some of them, even not knowingly, Nebuchadnezzar, he's one of my favorite characters. It's sort of like I would never have chosen Nebuchadnezzar as an agent of God's change, uh, but he ended up being it. Who would have thought Moses, who was known to be a murderer, would be chosen by God to do that? What about Noah? What about all these people, both Old and New Testament, had feet of clay. We've talked about this in our earlier classes that life is messy. It is not tidy. Uh, those of you who expect tidiness in life are going to be hugely disappointed. It just is not. And so, what do we do about that? Well, the first thing is to focus on others who may need hope more than you do, and you may need to share some of that. What do you think? Have you encountered those situations where just the fact that you paid attention to someone gave them hope? Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, can you remember back to the first time you prayed a prayer of real commitment and turned everything over to God? Can you remember a time when you did that? If you really can't, it might be time for you to do that. But if you can, you know what? Did your character and personality since then change? Yeah, yeah. I guess we need to look around ourselves today and take the time to really see. How many discouraged people can you name? How many people in just your daily walk have you encountered that are resigned, absolutely resigned, that I can't change anything, it's just terrible, I guess this is just my lot in life? I know a bunch, and I can tell you that Satan's work is being done. That's all it takes is for you to take yourself out of the action because you are discouraged, you feel no hope, et cetera, et cetera. And when you do that, other people will suffer as well. So it's a downward cycle, for sure. That's really important for us to remember. What about in your family or your extended family? I know many of us in this family struggle with family situations that are almost intractable. I get that. I have one myself. So I get that, and it is a struggle. But the fact is, we have hope, and our prayers for them will have some impact, more than we can imagine. And that's where patience comes in. You've got to be patient. Uh, we treat God many times like a spare tire. It's sort of like we aren't worried about our spare tire at all. When's the last time you thought about your spare tire? When, when's the last time you wondered,
When we needed it.
yeah. When's the last time you were sitting there at the dinner table and said, oh, I wonder if my spare tire has air in it? It's sort of like, no, we don't. But we treat God that way. It's sort of like, ooh, this is awful. I've got it flat. It's on the interstate. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? It's sort of like, yeah, well, Mary and I found ourselves a couple of times in that situation. It's sort of like, well, I didn't expect it, but here we go. So, yeah, we need to be careful about how we see God. And that's part of that pursuit of God. Part of why we're looking at the autobiography of God through parables. We want to know God. We want to know Him well enough to be good at pursuing Him. So, what can we do to give people hope? You do that all the time, Missy.
That's right.
what are some of the examples you could share with the rest of us on where to start?
Just listening, you can see it in their eyes,
Yeah,
even when you go to Safeway.
yes,
You can look at someone and know that they're struggling, you know. There's so much, and it just hurts me that I wasn't involved with that little girl that committed suicide out of Trinidad.
yeah,
And actually out of Aguilar. It just kills me that I didn't even know she was back here, you know. And all she needed was some hope.
sure.
That 15, I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, you can't address what you don't know.
I know,
And but you can address what you do know. That's a good example to make us more resolute in what we choose to do. I think one of the things that a family of Christians like us can do is to give a forum to the forumless. There are a lot of people out there that live a life that no matter where they are, nobody's listening. They'll try to say, yeah. It's almost like next time we'll let you know when we want to hear from you. Uh, Giving those people a forum, just a simple forum, to be able to be heard, to be able to converse, is incredibly powerful. Because when you're heard, you become someone who matters. Not only perhaps in the sight of others, but in their sight, in their own sight. That's really amazing. I don't know about you, but in my former life, there were thousands of people I encountered every day who literally were seeking a forum and they couldn't find it. They absolutely couldn't find it. There was nobody interested in hearing what they had to say. And you go through life with those kinds of events cycling. You cycle downward to a point that hope is lost. You know, and they begin to wonder, well, if I'm not important to anyone else, why am I here? What is this all about? Well, we can absolutely turn that around. Uh, what a person says, whether it may be factual or not, needs to be listened to. If it's not factual, help them. Help them see, oh, that's not really true, but here. But by just ignoring them, rolling your eyes and walking away, that's probably not the carried answer that God would hope for us. So, yeah. Any other ideas or thoughts on this? Yes.
So as far as when the last time I did my most sincere prayer, that's most mornings, when I recognize that I'm planning too much for myself to do, and I need to calm down. And when I plan, I see all the negative things and try to compensate for them. And so I have to train myself to think about Proverbs 16:3. Commit your work to the Lord and your plans will be established. 9, the heart of man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps. So my prayer is, Father, I set my day before you. Please help me with this. Please help me to see what you're giving me to do in each moment, with the understanding that little moments mean more than we think.
Yes.
With ourselves and with other people,
Absolutely.
and I have to be faithful with them. And I've known that ever since I was very young. I've known that those verses. And that's what I have to work with. And then as far as being in a situation where someone or something has really irritated me, that's Proverbs 17:13. The way I say it, I turn it upside down. If you repay bad with bad, good will go away. And you have to know that, and you have to discipline yourself when bad things are happening, when someone's trying to do you bad in a little moment. You have to put the good back, or it will go away. Romans 12:17 says something like that also. And repay no one evil for evil, but give thought to do what is honorable in the sight of all. And that's the life we have to live, even in the little moments.
Yes, in the little moments.
It's not the big goal, it's the little mustard seed side moments.
Absolutely.
Thank
Thank
you.
Jeannie, thanks for sharing that. That's so true. My prayer usually is, God, I have these things I need to do today, but I know that you will modify at will. Just please give me a heads up. I think especially our ranchers start out every day with sort of knowing a little bit about what you want to do, but it gets modified fast, doesn't it? Ranchers have to be the smartest people on this earth. I just can't believe it. Well, thank you for your comments. We'll try to get ready for worship now. Thank you. Greatly appreciate it.